And the brain is in here. The respiratory system's really pretty easy. At the very top, you can see that there's no rings. See how the trachea has those cartilaginous rings? At the top, it's a bigger structure, and it's right up in the neck. That's the larynx, which is the voice box. That's how the cat meows. And then if you open up the voice box, there's these folds of cartilage near the top of the voice box. And as the sound goes through there, it vibrates to make the sounds that the cat makes, right there. Purring, yowling, all that stuff is made through the vocal cords that are found in the larynx. The trachea, like we said, is a pretty long tube. It extends from the bottom of the larynx all the way down past the chest, underneath the heart, and it goes almost halfway into the thoracic cavity, where it will then start to branch. The first branches are the bronchi, and again, they're just splitting up the air, so some goes to the left lungs and some goes to the right lungs. And then, I need a sheet to follow along on. This one doesn't really show it, but there's smaller ones, so if you look on the lungs, right there, if you cut through the lungs, you'll see the smaller lobes of the lungs. And then it should branch smaller, and the real small branches, here's some right here, are called bronchioles. So the big branches are bronchi, and then the smaller ones are bronchioles. And then you have the lobes of the lung, and on the left side of the lung you have both sides of the top ones are the anterior, and then the middle ones are the medial, and then the bottom ones are the posterior. And then you look and there's one last one down here, it's accessory, and it looks like it's on the left side, but it's actually attached over on the right and comes over to the left side because the heart, remember, kind of goes that way, so it makes sure that it all fits in there perfectly. So those are the different lobes of the lung. Their function, of course, is to exchange oxygen going into the blood, carbon dioxide leaving the blood. And that's all done through passive transport, so requires less energy. There's microscopic structures within the lungs called the alveoli, and that's where the gas is exchanged. And that's what gives it its sort of peepy consistency, like a peep, you know. You can't really see it. You can just kind of see it's sort of spongy, the lungs. This muscular structure right here that separates the thoracic and abdominal cavity is called the diaphragm, and when it contracts, that expands the lungs and the cavity here, and then when it relaxes, the oxygen is pushed out for exhaling. So inhaling, the diaphragm contracts, presses down on the abdomen, so the lungs have more room to expand. Okay. This is the female reproductive system, so that's the next structures. And the top little structure right here, the little round structure, is the ovary, and that's where the eggs are matured and released. And it's suspended into the dorsal cavity, and it's held in place by the ligament right here, because that's not on your sheet. Oh, the ovarian ligament, which holds it in place. And then you have those finger-like projections around. You can't really see the fingers, but it's that tissue on top of it right here, and that's called the fimbria, and that has the finger-like things that grab the eggs out of the ovary when they're mature. And then they go along through the uterine tube, which we call a fallopian tube in a human. And then you have the uterus, which has two parts. This is the uterus. The horns of the uterus are right in here, and in a cat, that's where the kitties will develop. And then this part right here is the body of the uterus. And this don't get separated. At the base of the uterus, you can feel it starts to skinny up. It's called the neck. That's the cervix. And you can kind of feel it. It's kind of a hard little place right there, and that's the part that has to dilate for the babies to get out. And then below that is the tube for the babies to come out, and that's called the vagina. And that goes all the way down to the opening. Remember that there are two separate tubes, one for urine and one for babies in the cat. Usually to the left on the side. Did you guys find your anal gland? I don't see it. Is there one on this cat? Do you remember finding it on this cat? Who's male?
Oh, sorry.
It's right there. And it's just a little glandular structure that gives off scent. More dominant in a male cat than a female cat. Okay, so we switch cats. The male are on the outside. Okay, so right here this got cut, the vas deferens, but in this case we have now the testy, which hangs down. It almost looks exactly like an ovary, it just hangs down. And the testy is where the sperm is produced. And then we have this surrounding that's on the bottom now, and that's the epididymis, and that's where the sperm matures. And then it goes out through this missing tube. It's held in place by this sac called the scrotum. And the tube that's been cut, this is the tube right here, is the vas deferens, and that transports the sperm. And then we follow it behind. This goes up, back behind the urethra. Here you continue to follow it. Goes back under here, and it dumps into the urethra, which is at the base of the bladder. And now the male has all the stuff in one tube. The sperm and the urine go through the same tube, just at different times. And so that tube follows all the way down. They didn't dissect that out of there. So we can't see this because it hasn't been dissected. And the first big bump down the middle here is called the bulbourethral prostate gland, sorry. This first bump right here, there's just one of them. It's called the prostate gland, and that secretes seminal fluid for lubrication. And then it continues down. And right here you can see that there's muscle. And right at the base of the muscle, right where that muscle is, there's going to be two glands on either side of the urethra. Remember, this is the urethra coming down right here. So on two sides, there they are right there, two glands. Those are the bulbourethral gland, and those secrete fluid to nourish the sperm and so forth, because it's got a long trip to make. It's just getting ready to leave. And then, where's the rest of your stuff? Then the tube becomes a little bit bigger. It's right here now. And that would be the penis, and that's the tube that takes the fluid, sperm, and whatnot out of the body. I don't know where you guys... Oh, here it is, right here. And there's the opening right there. So you find the bladder, and then the tube goes down, hits the prostate gland, goes farther down, hits the two bulbourethral glands, and then it becomes the penis and goes out. That's the parts of the male. And on this guy, still is no. Again, you go kind of on the left side, and there's some on both sides, but there's a gland right down there, and that's the anal gland for scent. Okay? The urogenital system means urinary and reproductive organs, so we split it up. We have female reproductive, male reproductive, and now excretory. And the excretory system includes the kidney, and this is the kidney right here. It's kind of angled. And the kidney houses the nephrons, and the nephrons are the microscopic structures that filter nitrogen wastes out of the blood. There are 3 layers in the kidney for you guys to know. The very outer layer here is the cortex. It's usually lighter in color, but if you look at, you can see the consistency is a little bit different. And then this middle part here, which is browner, that's the medulla, and that's where all the nephrons are housed. And then in here, these little tubes are called the calyx. So go CMC. And then you have major calyx and minor calyx, and that's just the little collecting tubes for the urine. And then they go out through the ureter. Don't get that confused with your urethra. The 2 ureters, remember he was talking about, and I just tore one, so I'd be sued. Your cat is like disintegrating. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's disintegrating because I barely even touched that ureter and it just like melted. It's like gone. I can't even find it anymore.
She's gonna dock you for that one.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
Well, it's gooey. You can't.
It
find
is. It's you
anything.
guys. It's just gooey. He needs to be done teaching. Okay, here's the ureter right here. This little tube right here, and that leads up, and of course that takes the urine and water to the bladder where it's stored until it leaves through the urethra. Where's that other kidney stuff? Oh, above the kidney, I knew I forgot that. This gland right above the kidney here, right there, that gland, that's the adrenal gland, or sometimes called suprarenal gland on a cat, and that secretes adrenaline, and the cat gets scared and excited, and the doggy's chasing him or whatever, which increases heart rate and blood flow and sweating and all that kind of stuff. I think that's it. Now we have to do the brain. The brain inside the cat, and the big part right here is the cerebrum, and it's got the gyrus, which are the bumps, and the sulcus, which are the grooves, and they haven't removed the meninges yet. The sac right here is called the meninges, the sac that protects the heart, and you can see it's pretty tough. It's got two layers, the dura mater, which is the outside layer, and the inner layer, which is pia mater. This part right here that kind of looks like cauliflower is the cerebellum, second part of the brain. Then when the brain starts to skinny up, that's the medulla oblongata, and then it would go into the spinal cord. Here's a brain that's out. When the meninges is gone, now all the brains are split into two hemispheres. The place where they're held together is called the corpus callosum. It's near the base of the brain, like right in here. And the cerebrum is for control, thought process in us, things like that, but it's main control organ. And then, I think you guys are missing your cerebellum. Cerebellum would be right here. Again, it'd be look like that right there. And the cerebellum is for muscle control. There it is. Sick. Like a brain puzzle. There you go. And then, like I said, medulla oblongata is for autonomic response, balance, things like that. Right here are the optic lobes for sight, and way at the front, you kind of got a little smushy, are the olfactory lobes for smell. Now your 12 cranial nerves are located right on the brain. They're really small, and you guys cut them out so you can't really see them. So I'm just going to make you know them in order. So you have on all the Olympus, towering tops, fin, and German bites, hops. And we'll just kind of run through those again so you know them. The first one is olfactory. They come right off the olfactory lobe, and it's for smell. The next one is optic, coming right off the optic lobe for smell. This is often called the optic chiasma because it's like a cross. And then you have the oculomotor, which is for movement of the eye. Then trochlear, and I'm not showing exactly where they are, but they're just in order, and they're on the brain only, so they're all right here. Trochlear is for rotation of the eye. Most of the stuff is for the eye. Trigeminal is the tongue and jaw. Abducens is rotation of the eye. Facial is face muscles. Auditory, hearing. Glossopharyngeal, pharynx and tongue. Vagus is the heart. Spinal accessory is the neck and back. And hypoglossal is the tongue. Now I have to apologize to you guys because I got going on vestibulocochlear, and that is another word. That instead. Used to call it vestibulocochlear, but vagus is the V, should be there. So it is still on Old Olympus, towering tops, a fin, and German bites and hops. I was crazy the other day. I don't know why I said that. So you want to erase your A and make it a V again. I just was being silly. The central nervous system includes the stuff in the middle, which is the brain and spinal cord. And it looks like you guys started to dig down. Remember, did you go down here? Some of you were going to dig down here and see if you could find where it branches off. That's called the equina. And then the peripheral nervous system are all those nerves, the spinal nerves. And then there's that nerves that's along the lingual, right in here. And then there was a nerve in the arm, right here. And then there's a nerve, the sciatic nerve, which is running along the femoral artery in the leg. So just to show you that there are nerves all along the cat. And that those would be called spinal nerves, because they come off the spine. And then autonomic would be more off of the appendages and stuff. Oh, the pons. We forgot the pons. This is the pons right in this area. It's the circular structures. And the pons is the relay station that kind of, as the stuff comes back from the spinal cord, it stops at the pons and then goes to the cerebrum, and vice versa. When the cerebrum's saying, okay, lift your hand, it's a hot stove, it stops at the pons and then goes off to the body. I think that's it. Anything I forgot? Okay. Any questions?
Can you go over the brain parts again?
Okay.
Just like the major structures.
This big structure they have right here is a cerebrum. So like I would have this out, I would say name this structure and you'd say cerebrum. Or if both of them are together, I would have a pin in this or this. If I would say, if I had a pin here and said name the ridge, you'd say gyrus. And if I'd have the pin in here, you'd say I'd say name the groove, and you'd say sulcus, okay? So cerebrum would be one, cerebellum, pons. This is medulla. I lied. This is the olfactory bulb right there. Probably won't have that on there. This is the optic bulb. I can have that on there. I just have. Well, I do have olfactory lobe. I'd be way at the end on the front, and then there's a sort of cut off. But right here, it's right after the cerebrum. It's kind of like there's this extension like that. And I might use the human brain too. Almost the whole upper forearm, triceps brachii. And then I had you cross out biceps brachii because it's teeny tiny underneath, way in there. Instead, we know brachialis, okay, which is in the upper arm right there. Okay, so you got to cross out that one. And those are both for arm movements. The triceps bigger goes back, and the brachialis brings it forward for when it's walking. Brachioradialis. This arm's better. Brachioradialis. Did I get you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is the big muscle that goes right to the thumb. Okay, it goes right to the thumb. And that's on the forearm. And it helps the paw rotate a little bit. And then you have the next muscles, and it goes E, 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 F, E, F, E. So in order, and it goes around the outside. So you start with your thumb and go around. Okay, so that's brachioradialis. Then we have E, 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 and usually the flexors are bigger. F, E, F, E. All the way around. It seems like there's always one left over, but that's a really small part that I think is just a tendon. Or a really small one that you don't need to worry about. So E, 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 F, E, F, E. And that's all you have to know. Obviously, what do the E's do? Extend the arm, and the F's flex. Okay, and you think about that. How much does the cat do of that? When it's, when a cat is playing with stuff, it kind of does that a little bit. But. Then we talked about the manus muscles, and that's different than the tori. The manus muscles are up inside the carpals right here. So you dig inside of there, and all these little pink muscles inside of there are the manus muscles. They're very small, just like in our hand, those little muscles that work for paw movements. Okay, now we do the leg, the back legs. And this, remember we called it the crossing our leg muscle. That's the first top muscle right here, and it's actually this whole thick thing. On us, it's just that one little strip, but on the cat, it's a strip and then this really flat thing that covers the upper part of the leg. That's sartorius. And it's not for crossing the leg in a cat, but it's for movements, sideways movements, more like this. And then we have gracilis, which is this bottom one that they've cut to reflect. Okay, so it's on the bottom half of a leg, and there is a femoral artery and vein here, which they kind of cut, and that separates the two. So gracilis is below it, and sartorius is above it. And gracilis is the groin muscle. These two kind of work as pairs. I think the sartorius brings it in, and the gracilis brings it back out. Then we have the rear end muscles, and remember that's again compared to the human. We have the big. In us, we have the big gluteus maximus, which is the farthest back muscle, and then on top of it we have the gluteus medius. This is really good. But in a cat, since they're a quadruped, the back muscle is the gluteus maximus. So it's supposed to be named after size, but it's the size of the human muscle, so it's opposite. And then the upper one, which is much bigger, is the gluteus medius. So those are the rear end muscles. And what do? They help like cats to jump and so on. It's basically bringing the leg forward to contract it. And it's kind of fun. You can actually, too bad the cat can't contract its muscles, but you can actually see kind of a little bit how the actions work. Okay, then we have the biceps femoris, which is the big outer muscle right here. It's a huge chunk of meat right there. biceps femoris, and that's the big, powerful jumping muscle. When the cat actually jumps up somewhere, he's using that, and that's why it's so big, the biceps femoris. Rectus femoris is underneath the sartorius, right here. Okay, and that is to bend the hip, flex the hip, is what you should say. Then we have the vastus muscles, the three vastus muscles. We have vastus lateralis and vastus medialis. And then way down inside, right there, oh, this is really good. I have to remember to use the cat for this, is vastus intermedius. And all those vastus are the teardrop, and they help to bend at the knee. Bend and flex at the knee. This is really cool how you can feel that when you do that knee one. Is this the one you did knee surgery on? This one's still good. Okay, lower leg, the very big outer muscle. I have to sneeze.
Bless you.
I probably have boogers everywhere. Okay, this big, huge one is gastrocnemius. Underneath is soleus. Okay, and that's to flex the ankle. The gastrocnemius flexes the ankle, and the soleus extends the ankle. And then we have three. Remember PET. Find your shin bone, and you go. There should be three muscles coming out from the side of it. PET. The biggest one here, T, is tibialis anterior. Next is extensor digitorum, and next is peroneus longus. Peroneus longus and extensor digitorum are very small. Tibialis anterior is big. And those, trying to think here exactly what they do on the cat. It's extend the foot, like at the end of their walk when they push off like that. That's what those front muscles do. And I forgot, it's extensor digitorum longus, because it's in the leg. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Okay, so now what we can do is you can re-watch that movie.